The mic was too tall for him. 9-year-old Miles Keir, dressed in a wrinkled grey polo and blue jeans, stood on his tiptoes. The principal walked over, adjusted the stand, and gave him an encouraging nod. Miles didn't smile back. He looked out into the crowd of parents, teachers, and classmates, and then down at the crumpled sheet of paper in his hand. Behind him, a colourful banner read, "When I grow up." In the front row sat his father, Landon Keir, the CEO of Keir Tech Solutions. Cold, composed, rich. His tie was perfect. His posture stiff. His phone screen lit up every few seconds. Beside him sat Kayla Vaughan, sunglasses pushed up like a headband, sipping from her triple-shot espresso. The room hushed. Miles took a breath. "I don't want to be a CEO." A few chuckles floated from the back. "I don't want to be like my dad." The laughter stopped, because he brought someone home, but she's not my mom. And now he sleeps alone, and smiles less, and forgets things. And I don't think CEOs are supposed to forget how to be happy. Gasps. Somewhere in the middle of the audience, a teacher lowered her clipboard. Another teacher quietly reached for her phone, not to text but to record. Miles stepped down, silent, no music, no applause, just stunned silence. A storm had started. Quietly. But it was coming. He sat behind the wheel, hands locked, breathing through clenched teeth. The clip had already been posted. 2 versions, one from a parent, another from a teacher. Both were now at over 300,000 views. Local blogs had picked it up. Headlines read, "CEO's son delivers career day bombshell little boy. Big truth, my dad. Sleeps alone." Now the sadness behind success, Miles Keir speaks out. Kayla hadn't said a word since they left the school. She crossed her legs in the passenger seat, checked her lipstick in the mirror, then finally muttered, "Kids are dramatic." Landon didn't look at her. He was still hearing Miles' voice echo. He used to laugh when Jasmine was here. Now he doesn't. And that was the first time her name had passed through his mind in days. Jasmine, the one woman he hadn't defended. The one woman who had quietly become home and then quietly left. He turned off his phone. For the first time in months, he felt exposed. Jasmine Cole stirred the pot on the stove, her little apartment kitchen warm with the scent of tomato basil soup. She was still in scrubs. Her curls were tied back. The only sound was the hum of NPR in the background, until her phone buzzed 3 times. A friend, a cousin, her former colleague from Landon's firm. Each text had a link. She tapped one. The video loaded, and there he was, Miles, her little reader, her puzzle partner, her favorite boy with the loudest laugh and the most fragile heart. She watched it once, then again. Then she turned off the stove and walked into her living room. She sat in silence, not because she was surprised, but because she had waited months for someone to finally say out loud what she'd been too hurt to explain. The boy sat cross-legged on his bed, hugging the stuffed bear Jasmine had once patched up for him. "Did I mess up?" he asked softly. Landon stood in the doorway. No suit jacket, no phone. "You told the truth," he replied. "But truth makes people mad." Landon stared at his son. "Yeah," he said, voice raw. "Sometimes it does." Beside her lamp sat a stack of letters. Sealed, never opened, never sent. Each one began the same. "Dear Miles, I miss you, but I couldn't stay where I wasn't seen." She didn't cry. She just kept staring at the last message Landon had sent weeks ago. "Hope you're okay." Miles keeps asking. Tonight, the whole world was asking. What kind of man replaces home with convenience? And could he ever fix what his son had broken wide open? Landon didn't go back to the office that afternoon. For the first time in years, he drove without a destination, just circled, quiet neighborhoods, until the sunlight dimmed behind scattered clouds. His phone vibrated again. Emails, mentions, blog headlines, PR damage control waiting to happen. He ignored them all. In a single day, Miles had undone everything he'd built around silence. Not just the lie about Kayla, but the lie he'd told himself that Jasmine didn't matter, that leaving things unspoken was easier than being honest. But the world had heard Miles. Loud and clear, Landon pulled over, rested his head on the steering wheel and closed his eyes. He didn't feel powerful. He felt small. Later that evening, he stepped through his front door. The house was spotless, polished, sterile. Kyla sat on the couch, scrolling on her phone with one leg crossed over the other. A half-empty wine glass sat on the side table. "Well," she said, without looking up, "I hope you've got a plan for the press. Your son just started a storm." He dropped his keys on the counter. "You need to go." She paused, looked at him. "Excuse me?" I said. "Pack your things." "Because of a viral video?" She scoffed, standing up. "Are you serious?" Landon's voice stayed even. "Because he said what I didn't have the spine to." Kyla's jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. She packed in silence. Within an hour she was gone. Landon stood alone in the hallway. For the first time in months, the house felt like what it really was. Empty. At that same hour, Jasmine sat on her apartment balcony, wrapped in a grey sweater, legs tucked beneath her. She didn't need to check the views on the video to know what it had become. Her phone buzzed again. She let it ring. She didn't need Landon to explain. Not now. Maybe not ever. Everything had already been said through Miles, and for once, someone believed her without her having to shout for it. She closed her eyes and remembered the night she left. Miles had watched her zip up her small suitcase, eyes wide and uncertain. "Are you going away?" he asked. She knelt, kissed his forehead. "I need to live where I'm treated like I matter." And now, the whole world knew she had. The next morning, Landon dressed in a plain shirt and slacks. No tie, no suit, no shield. He made breakfast, burnt toast and 2 strong coffee. He drove Miles to school in silence. Halfway there, Miles broke it. "Did I do something wrong?" Landon looked over, then back at the road. "No, you told the truth, but people are mad." "You looked mad." "I wasn't mad at you." Miles hesitated. "Do you miss her?" Landon didn't lie. "Yes, she misses me too. I know it." Landon nodded slowly. "I think she misses both of us." By noon, reporters had called Landon's office 3 times. His assistant left messages. His firm's board wanted a public statement. He said nothing. He had more important things to do. He drove to a small flower shop on the edge of town, bought a single sunflower, Jasmine's favorite. No bouquet, no note, just a sunflower. He drove to Jasmine's building, stood at her door for a long time before knocking. She opened it. She didn't look surprised. "I'm not here to fix it all," Landon said quietly. "I just needed to start somewhere." She looked at the sunflower, then at him. "You could have started months ago." "I know." She stepped aside, didn't invite him in, just let the silence sit between them. "What you did to me," she finally said, "wasn't just hurtful. It erased me." Landon swallowed. "I saw what was easy, not what was real." "And what do you see now?" "My son finally made me look in the mirror." Jasmine didn't reply, but she didn't close the door either. That night, Landon wrote a letter. "Dear Miles, you're braver than I've ever been. And today, you became the man I should have been a long time ago. I'm sorry for the silence. I'm sorry for the confusion. I'll spend every day trying to earn back your trust, not with gifts or promises, but with presence." He left it on Miles' pillow. The boy read it in the morning, then hugged him without saying a word. That was enough, for now. 3 years earlier, Jasmine Cole wasn't looking for anything, or anyone. She was sitting at the edge of her cousin's wedding reception, half tired from a long week at the children's clinic and half bored by the DJ's weak playlist. Her dress itched, her heels pinched, and she was already planning to slip out after dessert, until she saw the little boy in the mismatched socks. He raced between tables, clutching a plastic dinosaur, laughing like the world had no rules. She smiled at him. He smiled back, then zipped behind the buffet table and nearly collided with a tall man holding 2 drinks. The man didn't yell. He simply bent, fixed the boy's collar, and sent him off with a light touch on the back. Jasmine's smile lingered. That was the first time she saw Landon Keir. He wasn't loud, didn't work the room, didn't flirt. He stood with his back mostly to the crowd, watching over his son and sipping something non-alcoholic. No one hovered near him. He didn't invite conversation, but Jasmine noticed him noticing things. He watched the way Miles danced in circles without music. He noticed the toddler tipping over a tray of forks before anyone else did. And when Jasmine's aunt made a comment about some fathers being hands off, she saw Landon turn toward the voice, expression unreadable. She didn't know he was a CEO then, didn't know about his company, his investments, or the silence he carried like armor. She just saw a man keeping to himself, present but withdrawn, and curious enough that she couldn't ignore the pull. They first spoke at the buffet line. She reached for a piece of roast chicken just as he did. Their hands brushed. Jasmine made a face and said, "If this tastes like the last wedding I went to, we'll both need emergency sauce." He blinked at her, then smirked. "What does emergency sauce taste like?" She grinned. "Like forgiveness for dry poultry." He gave a quiet laugh. It was short, but real. "Landon," he said, extending a hand. "Jasmine," she replied, shaking it. "Speech therapist. I work with kids who have a lot to say but don't always know how." He nodded once. "Then you must be good at listening." "I try," she said, tilting her head. "And what do you do?" "I build things." She raised an eyebrow. "Like construction?" He hesitated. In a way, she didn't press. He didn't explain. That was the start. They ended up sitting near each other that night, not because of assigned seats, but because Miles took a liking to her. He dragged his folding chair next to Jasmine's and asked if she liked dinosaurs. "I love them," she said, "but I only know the friendly ones." Miles whispered the names of 10 terrifying species, while Jasmine pretended to be shocked. Landon watched, quiet, curious. After cake, Miles fell asleep in his father's lap. Landon didn't move. Jasmine, still seated beside them, broke the silence. "He's bright. He's loud," Landon replied. "Those two aren't opposites," she said. "They're signs of life." That made Landon look at her, longer, deeper, as if someone had said something no one else had dared to. The next day, he texted her. A simple message. "The chicken was dry. You were not." She laughed and answered back. "Then let's try dinner somewhere that serves moist chicken and questions that come with answers." He didn't reply right away. Hours passed. Then, dinner. Thursday, no titles, just food and honesty. Their first date was at a small restaurant in Durham. No press, no driver, no flash. They talked about childhood, about how she always wanted to work with kids, how he built his first company at 19, how he got too busy to process loss, how he hated being called a genius because he didn't feel like one. She asked about Miles's mom. He paused. "Brain aneurysm, 2 years ago. It was fast and unfair." Jasmine nodded. "I'm sorry. She was good with people." "I'm not. You're doing fine. I'm not trying to impress you." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm still here." He didn't smile, but he didn't shut down either. That was enough. By their 4th date, she met Miles again. This time on purpose. He ran to her, holding a box of markers. "Can you draw a dinosaur that looks happy?" Jasmine knelt. "I only draw happy dinosaurs." That afternoon, they made paper hats, chocolate chip cookies, and a mess that took over the entire kitchen. When Landon walked in and saw them dancing to a commercial jingle, he didn't say anything. He just leaned on the doorway and stayed a little longer than usual. Jasmine didn't ask for labels. She didn't push for speed. She liked slow. She liked steady. And Landon, he liked her silence, her calm, the way she never needed attention to feel important. They fell into rhythm, without rushing, without titles, but with something that felt real anyway. By the 6th weekend together, Jasmine knew every corner of Landon's house and every part of it that still carried his late wife's memory. The guest room closet still held her sweaters. The hallway photo frames hadn't been changed. Miles' drawings on the fridge were taped around an old grocery list, written in someone else's handwriting. Jasmine never commented. She didn't move anything. She let the past breathe. Landon noticed that too. One Sunday morning, while Jasmine helped Miles with his solar system project at the kitchen table, Landon leaned against the counter and just watched them, quietly, almost disbelievingly. "You're good with him," he finally said. Jasmine looked up. "I like him. He likes you." She smiled. "Then we're even." Still, Jasmine never asked for more than what Landon gave. No demands, no ultimatums, no big questions. But inside, a quiet hope had started forming, not about diamonds or weddings, but about belonging. She liked the mornings when Miles climbed into bed with her just to show her his cereal prize. She liked folding the laundry even when it wasn't hers. She liked how Landon's eyes softened when he watched her stir soup like she owned the kitchen. It wasn't about control, it was about feeling seen. And for a while, that was enough. They went to the zoo one weekend. Miles carried a notebook and insisted on drawing every animal he saw. Jasmine held his hand while Landon walked beside them. He didn't speak much, but he didn't stay on his phone either. At the end of the day, they sat on a park bench while Miles ran around the fountain. Landon said, "He hasn't laughed this much in a long time." Jasmine turned to him. Maybe he needed space to breathe. Landon looked at her. We all did. For the first time, he reached for her hand. She let him. By month 9, Jasmine had started leaving a toothbrush at his place. By month 10, she had a drawer. By month 11, Landon asked, "You ever thought about staying over for good?" She blinked. "You mean move in?" "You're already here most nights. Miles expects you at breakfast." Jasmine studied him. "You want me to move in for him, or for you?" Landon hesitated. "It just makes sense." Her voice was soft. "That's not an answer." He looked away. "I'm not good with definitions, but you're good at structure," she said. "You build companies, timelines, contracts. I don't do well with feelings. They're unpredictable." Jasmine gave a small smile. "So am I." He didn't laugh, but he didn't pull back either. That night, she moved in. No ceremony, no suitcase. Just a quiet, unspoken decision to see where this would lead. The next few weeks felt peaceful. Jasmine adjusted to living there full-time. She still worked full hours at the clinic, but now she returned to dinner with 2 sets of eyes waiting for her, one small and eager, the other unreadable, but present. She did laundry, packed Miles's lunch, helped with homework. She and Landon shared soft moments, gentle nights, occasional kisses that felt like warm punctuation marks between days of routine. But still, no labels, no introductions, no acknowledgement of her place in his life to anyone outside the house. Jasmine started to notice and tried not to say anything, yet, until the brunch. It was hosted by Landon's company board, big backyard, garden brunch vibes, crisp tablecloths and polished speeches. Jasmine wore a pale yellow dress and heels that hurt after 10 minutes. She stayed close to Landon, thinking this would be the moment he'd finally say the words, "This is Jasmine, my partner." But when the introductions came, "This is Jasmine," Landon said. "A friend staying with us for a while." Friend, staying, for a while. She felt the heat crawl up her neck. No one questioned it. They smiled politely, asked nothing, assumed everything. Jasmine smiled too, out of habit, not pride. In the car ride home, she didn't speak. Neither did he. Until they pulled into the driveway and sat in the stillness of the garage. She turned to him. "Why did you say that?" "Say what?" "That I'm just a friend staying for a while." He blinked. It wasn't meant to be disrespectful, but it wasn't honest either. Landon exhaled. "I'm a private person." "You're not private. You're hiding." "Jasmine, I don't need you to post me on social media or rent a billboard," she said quietly. "But if I'm living in your house, eating with your child, and waking up next to you. I deserve better than to be your placeholder." He looked at her, said nothing. That silence was louder than anything he could have admitted. She nodded slowly and got out of the car. That night, they didn't speak. And for the first time since she moved in, Jasmine made her own dinner in silence. Alone. What happens when love lives in your house, but not in your name? Have you ever felt present in someone's life, yet completely invisible when it mattered? Jasmine gave her heart, her time, her care. But when Landon had the chance to claim her, he chose comfort over clarity. If you've ever been someone's secret instead of their choice, stay with this story, because how Jasmine handles what comes next, you'll feel it in your chest. Jasmine didn't leave that night, but something inside her shifted. She still got up the next morning to make breakfast. She still helped Miles find his missing sock. She still packed his lunchbox and left a note inside, like she always did. But when Landon came downstairs, she didn't greet him, didn't kiss his cheek. She poured her coffee, sipped it in silence, and left for work without looking back. Landon noticed. He wasn't oblivious, but he wasn't ready to talk either. And Jasmine wasn't going to beg for recognition in a house she helped keep standing. The next few days followed the same pattern. She still showed up, still did the invisible labor of loving both of them, but her smile didn't reach her eyes, and her warmth now came with a quiet caution. Miles noticed too. "Are you sad?" he asked her one evening while they colored dinosaurs. She hesitated. "Why do you think that? You don't laugh when I say silly things anymore." She paused, then forced a smile. "I'm just a little tired, baby. That's all." But kids always know better. And Miles had already started to sense the space growing between the grown-ups around him. That Friday night, Landon came home early. A rare thing. He brought takeout from her favorite Thai spot. Jasmine unpacked the containers without speaking, then set the table. They sat, just the two of them, Miles asleep early after a long school day. "I shouldn't have said what I said," Landon finally muttered. Jasmine didn't look up. "But you meant it." "I didn't know how else to explain us. We've been together for almost a year, Landon," she said, laying her fork down. "I live in your house. I tuck your son in. I stopped waiting for titles because I thought your actions spoke loud enough. But when it counted, you made me feel like an afterthought." He stared at her. "You know I care about you. Then why was I easier to hide than introduce?" He had no answer. And that said everything. Later that night, Jasmine sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her overnight bag by the closet. She didn't pack it. But for the first time, she started thinking about what it might mean to. The next morning, Miles bounded into the room in pajamas, holding a paper crown he'd made out of foil and construction paper. "Queen Jasmine," he shouted, jumping onto the bed. "Come to your throne." Jasmine laughed, a real one this time, and pulled him into her arms. She kissed the top of his head, heart twisting. He wasn't her child, but he felt like home. And that's what made everything harder. Landon watched them from the doorway. He saw what he stood to lose, but he still didn't speak. Still didn't step forward. Still didn't claim the love right in front of him. That Sunday, they went to the park. The three of them sat on a blanket, eating sandwiches and tossing breadcrumbs to ducks. Jasmine brought her camera and took photos of Miles running barefoot in the grass. When he wasn't looking, she snapped one of Landon. Sunlight on his jaw, distant eyes, shoulders heavier than usual. She stared at the photo later that night. It was a good picture, but it didn't feel like someone who was fully there. The next week, Landon's schedule changed again. Later nights, phone calls at dinner, emails during bedtime. Jasmine knew the rhythm, knew when he started pulling away. She'd seen it before, back when they first met. He mistook distance for protection. He thought if he held everything in, no one could get hurt. But all it did was make her feel like she was disappearing. Again. Thursday night, she waited for him. Dinner on the stove. Lights dimmed. Miles already asleep. Landon came in late. Tie loosened. Eyes tired. She asked softly, "Do you want this life?" He blinked. What? This one. With me. With him. Because I can't keep giving myself to someone who only shows up halfway. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I don't know, he finally whispered. Jasmine nodded. That was her answer. Jasmine didn't cry that night. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw things. She didn't demand more. She simply went to bed in the guest room. It was the first time she'd ever slept there. When Landon walked past in the morning and saw the door shut, something inside him shifted, but not enough to knock, not enough to fight for her. He just stood there, still, cowardly, quiet. And Jasmine? She kept waiting for a knock that never came. The next few days unfolded like the quiet after a fight that was never declared. Jasmine got up early, made breakfast, packed Miles's lunch, and took the trash out before Landon could. She didn't speak more than she needed to. She smiled at Miles, listened to his dinosaur facts, helped him with homework. But with Landon, her eyes no longer lingered, and her voice no longer softened. She had already begun the slow act of removing herself. It was a Wednesday afternoon when she sat in her parked car outside the clinic, hands frozen on the steering wheel. She couldn't shake the thought. He wants the comfort, not the commitment. And still, she stayed. Because of Miles. Because of habit. Because walking away from what looked like love, even if it no longer felt like it, wasn't easy. That Friday, while picking up groceries, she ran into one of her old friends from grad school, Talia. They talked in the produce aisle, halfway between oranges and avocados. Talia asked, "Are you still with that guy? The one with the son?" Jasmine smiled politely. Still is a complicated word. Talia raised an eyebrow. He hasn't made it uncomplicated yet? Jasmine shook her head, and that one gesture, the tiniest movement, was the loudest admission she had made in weeks. She went home with bags full of groceries and a heart full of truth she didn't know how to live with. Miles ran to her at the door. "Did you get the dinosaur mac and cheese?" "I got 2 boxes." She smiled, kissing his head. Landon stepped out from the kitchen, holding a glass of water. His eyes lingered on her, longer than usual. But again, he said nothing, and Jasmine realized she was slowly turning into furniture in her own relationship. Useful, present, but no longer seen. That night, Miles asked her to read a new bedtime story. She tucked him in, fluffed his pillow, and opened the book. Halfway through, he stopped her. "Do you think I'm hard to love?" She froze. "Why would you ask that? I heard Kayla say that once, that I make things hard for Dad, that he needs space." Jasmine closed the book and pulled him close. "You are not hard to love. You're one of the easiest people I've ever loved. And don't ever believe anyone who tells you otherwise." Miles didn't say anything after that, but he slept holding her hand. She sat by his bed for an hour after he drifted off, then stood up, walked into the hallway, and found Landon leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching silently. "You heard him," she said. He nodded once. "I should have spoken up that night." "You didn't just stay quiet that night," Jasmine replied. "You've been quiet since the day I walked into your life." Landon opened his mouth, closed it again. "You don't have to explain," she whispered. "I get it. You were never ready. You needed someone steady, not someone seen." "That's not true." She looked at him. "Then prove me wrong." But he didn't. Not that night. Not the next. And Jasmine? She finally packed a small overnight bag, just the basics. Toothbrush, 1 change of clothes, her journal, and the photo of her and Miles at the zoo. She placed it quietly in the guest room closet. She wasn't leaving yet. But her heart had already started saying goodbye. Jasmine sat in the quiet of the guest room, staring at the blank page of her journal. No words came. Not because she didn't have anything to say, but because everything she wanted to say had already been said with her silence. She had spoken through every late-night dinner alone, every forced smile at brunch, every question Landon never answered. This wasn't heartbreak. This was the exhaustion of hoping someone would meet her halfway and watching them stay seated. Saturday morning, Miles knocked on her door. She opened it, still in pajamas, and found him holding a paper crown, taped and folded with pieces of gold candy wrappers. "I made you a new one," he said shyly. "The old one got squished in my backpack." She crouched to meet his eyes. "Thank you, baby." He looked at her carefully. "Are you mad at Dad?" Jasmine hesitated. "No, I'm just thinking a lot, because he said you were just a friend." Jasmine blinked. He had heard. Miles dropped his eyes. "You're not just a friend." "I know," she whispered. And that simple truth, from a 9-year-old heart, held more love than any sentence Landon had ever offered. Later that day, Jasmine folded laundry in the guest room while Landon worked on his laptop in the kitchen. They moved around each other like strangers. No tension, no spark, just air. When she passed by him with a clean stack of towels, he finally spoke. "Are you moving out?" She didn't stop walking. Not yet. He stood, followed her halfway down the hall. "You could have said something." "I did," she said quietly. "Every single day I stayed, I was saying something." He looked like he wanted to say more, but, as always, he didn't. That evening, Jasmine took Miles to the bookstore. They browsed for over an hour. He picked a new dinosaur encyclopedia. She picked nothing. At checkout, the cashier smiled at them. "You two look alike. You must be his mum." Jasmine froze. Miles beamed. She swallowed the lump in her throat and said, "I'm someone he loves, and that's more than enough." Back home, she found Landon in the living room. He was holding a framed photo of his late wife. He didn't notice Jasmine watching him. She quietly turned and walked to her room. She wasn't jealous of the woman in the photo. She was just tired of standing in her shadow with no light of her own. That night, Landon sat on the couch with a drink in hand. He stared into the dark, phone face down. For the first time in weeks, he opened his notes app and typed, "She was never loud. But I heard her in every corner of this house. She didn't beg, but she stayed long enough for me to learn what home sounded like. I just never answered the door." He didn't send it. He didn't share it. He just saved it. Because that was still all he knew how to do, keep things to himself. Jasmine, meanwhile, lay in bed rereading the note Miles had scribbled for her the week before. "I like you better than cartoons. Don't leave." It was written in purple crayon on the back of a cereal box. She folded it, slipped it into her journal, and promised herself one thing. If Landon didn't start choosing her with words, not just routine, she would finally choose herself and go. The next morning, Landon left early. He didn't say goodbye. Jasmine stood at the window, watching his car back out of the driveway like it always did, routine, efficient, distant. She didn't feel angry. She felt done. Not with Miles, not even with the house, just with the waiting. Later that afternoon, Jasmine took Miles to the park. He climbed the jungle gym and chased 2 other kids around the sandbox. Jasmine sat on a bench nearby, sunglasses on, water bottle in hand, eyes tracking him like she always did. He was happy out there, free. But every time he ran back to her with a new rock or question, he looked, for her face first, like he needed her approval to keep being himself. That need broke her heart in the gentlest way, because she knew what it meant to seek joy in someone else's reflection. And she wouldn't let him grow up thinking love had to be invisible to be safe. Back home, Jasmine began cleaning the hall closet. Old coats, unmatched gloves, boxes of electronics and things Landon hadn't touched in years. In the back, she found a small container labeled holiday cards. 2 years ago, she sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were unopened Christmas cards. One was addressed to Landon, Jasmine, and Miles. She blinked. Someone had seen them as a family, even when Landon hadn't said it out loud. She placed the card on top of her journal. That evening, Landon returned just after 7 p.m. Miles was in bed, and Jasmine was folding laundry in the living room. He watched her from the doorway. "You don't have to do all this," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "I know. I mean it. You're not obligated to clean or cook or stay." She folded the last shirt. "But I did." Landon walked closer. "I've been thinking about what you said." "Which part?" "All of it." She met his eyes. Are you going to think about it for another year, or are you finally going to speak? He looked away. That was her answer. Later that night, she heard footsteps outside her room. Then the door creaked open. Landon stood there, hands in his pockets. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. I didn't know how to make space for you without feeling like I was erasing her. Jasmine sat up. I wasn't asking you to erase her. I was asking you to see me. He stepped inside, slowly. I do see you. No, she said, voice low. You see what I do. You see what I bring. But you don't see me as someone worth choosing in front of others. Silence. I introduced you as a friend because I panicked, he admitted. I thought people would judge me for moving on. They weren't judging you, she said. They were judging the way you treated me. Landon nodded slowly. What do you want me to do? She didn't hesitate. Want me in front of people? I do. Then say it when it counts. Don't wait for me to disappear first. He stepped forward, then stopped himself. Jasmine stood, walked to the door, and held it open. Good night, Landon. This time, the silence wasn't about distance. It was about the line between being tolerated and being chosen. And Jasmine had finally drawn it. That night, she placed a single suitcase under her bed, not as a threat, but as a reminder to herself that the door would always be open. And so was the exit. The air inside the Brandywine Country Club was cool and stiff with formality. Servers moved between tables with champagne trays and polite nods. Jazz hummed in the background. Every conversation was just loud enough to signal wealth, but not enough to disrupt the decorum. Jasmine stood near the mimosa bar, quietly adjusting the sleeve of her light blue dress. She had worn heels she hated and styled her hair with extra care. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, but she wanted to belong. Across the room, Landon chatted with one of his senior board members, Mr. Delacroix, a man who made decisions with his fork before his vote. Jasmine glanced at Landon again. He hadn't introduced her yet. She'd been standing there for 15 minutes. A server passed. She took a glass she didn't want, and waited. Finally, Landon motioned her over with a slight tilt of his head. She walked up, calm, poised. Mr. Delacroix smiled as she approached. And who's this? Landon didn't look at her. He said, This is Jasmine. She's a friend, staying with us for a while. Just like that. A friend, staying, for a while. Delacroix nodded, offered a polite handshake, and continued eating his croissant, like the moment hadn't just sucked the air from Jasmine's lungs. She blinked once, swallowed the sting, and smiled. The kind of smile that cost her. She didn't speak during the rest of brunch. Not when Kayla Vaughn arrived uninvited and inserted herself at their table. Not when Landon leaned in to talk business and left her sitting beside two bored wives discussing hedge funds and lake houses. Jasmine sat still, like decoration, and wondered how she had become invisible again, right in front of the man who once saw her more clearly than anyone. When they returned home, Jasmine stepped out of the car before Landon even shut off the engine. She walked into the house, dropped her clutch on the kitchen counter, took off her shoes slowly. He followed her in moments later. Jazz, don't, she said softly, turning to face him. Just don't. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You didn't mean to say I mattered either. He exhaled. I was caught off guard. No, she said, shaking her head. You were protecting your image, and I just happened to be the casualty. He looked down at the floor. Jasmine folded her arms. Do you even know what it felt like? Standing there while you acted like I was a temporary houseguest. I didn't think it would upset you like this. Her voice cracked. Just slightly. That's the problem. You never think I'm supposed to feel anything at all. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. And Jasmine, she was too tired to keep helping him figure it out. That night, she moved her things back into the guest room. No explanation, no drama, just distance. Landon walked past the open door around midnight, paused, and kept walking. At work the next morning, Jasmine held it together through back-to-back appointments. Kids with stutters, Kids with trauma. Kids who couldn't find the words for their pain. She understood them more than ever, because now, neither could she. Landon didn't see Jasmine at breakfast the next morning. Miles did. She made him pancakes, shaped like dinosaurs, and packed his lunch with a juice box and 2 small notes folded inside. But when he asked if she was riding with them to school, she shook her head gently. "Today, I need a little time for myself," she said. Miles blinked. "Because of the brunch?" Jasmine knelt beside him. "You don't need to worry about grown-up stuff, sweetheart." "But I heard him." "I heard what he called you." Jasmine swallowed hard. "I know." He leaned into her, arms tight around her neck. "You're not just a friend." She held him for a few more seconds than usual. "Go on," she whispered. "Be great today." And he did, because Jasmine had never let her own sadness affect the way she poured love into that boy. Landon dropped Miles off in silence. He didn't say much in the car, didn't play the usual morning playlist, didn't glance in the rearview mirror as often. His mind was back at that brunch table, back to the moment Jasmine's shoulders slumped just slightly after he introduced her as a friend. He'd done it to maintain control, to avoid whispers, to keep things neat and non-threatening in a world that measured commitment in calculated deals. But he knew what it had cost. Her silence afterward had been louder than any argument. That afternoon, he left the office earlier than expected. He drove around the block 3 times before turning into the driveway. The house was quiet. Miles wouldn't be home for another hour. He was staying late for art club. Landon found Jasmine in the backyard, sitting with her back to the house, barefoot in the grass, a paperback novel face down on the bench beside her. She didn't look up when he stepped out. He sat on the other end of the bench. For a long time, neither of them said a word. Then, "I shouldn't have said what I said," he admitted. Jasmine stared ahead. "You've said worse in silence." He winced. "I panicked. You prioritized appearances. I didn't want them talking about us like I moved on too fast. I've been in your life for nearly a year. You know what I meant." She turned, now, slowly. "No, Landon. That's the thing. I don't know what you mean. Because you don't say it." He lowered his head. Jasmine's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I've loved your son like my own. I've loved you even when you made it hard. I've adjusted to your grief, your routines, your walls. But I will not keep shrinking so you can keep your image clean." He looked at her now, really looked, and for the first time in months, she let the pain show in her eyes. "I am not your secret," she said, "and I never asked you to replace her. I only asked you to see me." He reached out, but she stood before he could touch her hand. "I don't need you to fix this tonight," she added, "but I need to know you're not still deciding if I deserve to be in the picture." And with that, she walked back into the house, leaving him with his silence. And the truth. That night, Miles showed Jasmine a finger painting he made in art club. 3 stick figures. A sun. A house. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. She smiled. "Who's who?" He pointed. "That's you. That's me. That's Dad." "No, Kayla." "Nope," he said quickly. "She never helped with painting." She chuckled, then kissed his cheek. "Thank you for making me part of your picture. You always were." Later, in the guest room, Jasmine opened her journal, wrote 1 line. "A love that's afraid to be seen will never make you feel safe." She closed it, turned out the light, and promised herself again 1 more wound, and she would be done bleeding quietly. The day Kayla Vaughn arrived, the air felt heavier, not because of her presence, but because of what her presence replaced. She pulled up to the house in a rented black BMW, wearing sunglasses too large for her face and heels too loud for the driveway. Her suitcase wheels scraped against the pavement as she rolled them to the front door. Miles opened it before she could knock. He didn't smile. "Hi, buddy," she said, bending down with a tone too bright. "Still growing like a weed, huh?" He blinked at her, then stepped back without a word. Kayla stepped inside like she belonged. She didn't, but Landon had invited her. That was the problem. Jasmine came down the stairs just as Kyla walked in. Their eyes met. Kyla smiled first. "Oh, you're still here." Jasmine's expression didn't change. Apparently, Landon emerged from his office seconds later. He saw Kyla's hand on the staircase banister, saw Jasmine's stillness near the railing. He should have said something. That evening, Jasmine sat across the kitchen island, folding Miles's laundry. Kyla leaned against the counter, sipping wine from a tall glass like she owned the marble beneath her elbows. "So, how long have you been staying here again?" she asked. Jasmine folded a shirt. "Long enough to know when I'm being tested." Kyla laughed lightly. "I'm not testing you. I'm just trying to understand the arrangement. It seems undefined." Jasmine didn't look up. "There's nothing complicated about respect." "Well," Kyla said, walking to the sink, "you're certainly good at staying quiet." Jasmine finally looked at her. Calm. Unbothered. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it just means I've already said everything worth repeating. Miles watched them both from the dining table. He was coloring. But his crayon paused, because even he could feel the frost gathering. That night, Jasmine didn't stay for dinner. She left a plate in the microwave for Miles. Nothing for Landon. She walked upstairs, locked her door, and lay on her bed, fully dressed, arms crossed over her chest. She had known women like Kyla before. Loud, possessive, flirting in front of others not for love, but for power. But Jasmine wasn't jealous. She was disappointed. Because, after everything, this was how Landon responded. The next morning, Kyla joined them in the kitchen, in a silk robe that clearly wasn't hers. It wasn't Jasmine's either. She giggled at something on her phone and called Landon into the room, using a nickname Jasmine had never heard before. He came. She kissed his cheek in front of Miles. Miles looked down at his cereal and pushed his spoon around in the milk. Jasmine watched all of it from the hallway, still in her scrubs, hair pulled back, bag in hand. She didn't interrupt. She just turned and walked out the front door. At work she was quiet. Her co-worker, Anita, asked if she was okay. Jasmine smiled and lied. She helped 5 kids that day. But she couldn't help herself. That night she came home late. Kyla was on the couch with a blanket draped over her legs, wine in hand, laptop open. Landon was nowhere in sight. Jasmine walked to the fridge. Kyla didn't look up. "You're out late," she said casually. Jasmine opened the fridge. "Not as late as I planned to be." Kyla chuckled. "You know, it's wild how comfortable people get when they're not officially anything." Jasmine slowly shut the fridge. "Is that what this is for you? A competition?" "No," Kyla said, lifting her wine. "I've already won." Jasmine leaned against the fridge, calm as ever. "I hope the trophy was worth it." Upstairs, Miles sat on his bed, holding a photo of him and Jasmine at the Science Museum, taken 2 months ago. He heard voices downstairs. He heard the tension, the fake laughing, the low digs. He hugged the photo closer and whispered under his breath, "Please don't go." The next morning, Jasmine was packing Miles's lunch when he walked into the kitchen. He hugged her waist, tighter than usual. She crouched. "What's wrong, baby?" He didn't answer, just rested his head on her shoulder. She kissed the side of his face. "I'm not going anywhere today. Promise." "I promise." But she didn't say for how long. By that afternoon, Kyla had moved her things into the guest room, Jasmine's room. She said it loud enough for Jasmine to hear. She's been in there for weeks anyway. Guess it's open real estate. Landon didn't stop her, didn't ask Jasmine, didn't intervene. Jasmine packed that night. Not everything, just enough. She didn't sneak out. But she didn't say goodbye either, until Miles knocked on her door. His eyes filled with tears the moment he saw the half-zipped bag. "You're leaving." She crouched. "I'm giving your father room to figure out what he wants. But I want you here." She swallowed the ache in her throat. "And I love being here. But I can't keep being in a house that treats me like a shadow." He hugged her tightly. "You said you wouldn't go." "I said I wouldn't go today. And I didn't. But sometimes leaving doesn't mean you stopped loving someone. It means you started loving yourself too." He didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough. He handed her the photo from the Science Museum. "Take this, so you don't forget." She held it to her chest. "I could never forget you." She walked out with one bag. No fanfare, no confrontation, just quiet and pain. 5 days passed before Landon texted, "Hope you're okay." Miles keeps asking. Jasmine replied with one word, "Tell him I miss him." Landon read Jasmine's one-word reply over and over again. "Tell him I miss him. Not, I'm fine. Not take care. Not we'll talk soon." Just a message for his son, nothing for him. And that silence, the one he used to find comfort in, now clawed at his chest like guilt wearing gloves. He sat in his office, the city lights outside flickering against the glass windows, and let the weight of it all press down. He'd let Kayla into his home, and in doing so, he'd let Jasmine walk out. That night, Kayla reheated leftover lasagna in the microwave, humming along to a podcast. Miles sat at the kitchen table, staring at a blank page of homework. He wasn't hungry. He hadn't been since Jasmine left. "Need help with that?" Kayla asked, sliding the plate into the microwave. "No," he muttered. "You sure?" He didn't answer. She walked over, sat down across from him. "Look, kid, I know you miss her." "I'm not a kid," he snapped. "And she's not just anyone. Jasmine was everything." Kayla blinked. Before she could respond, Landon entered from the hallway. He heard it, every word. Later that night, after Kayla went to bed, Landon peeked into Miles's room. His son was curled up on the bed, still in jeans, the lights off, the paper unfinished. "Hey," Landon whispered. Miles didn't turn. "You said she wasn't staying forever." "I never said that." "Yes, you did. The day she moved in, you told me not to get too attached." Landon froze. He had forgotten, but Miles hadn't, and now he was living inside the consequence of those careless words. Landon sat at the edge of the bed. "Miles." Jasmine didn't leave because she stopped caring. She left because I didn't care loud enough. Miles finally looked at him. "Can we get her back?" Landon couldn't answer, because he didn't know. At the clinic, Jasmine kept her head down. She focused on her sessions, took her notes, smiled when she had to, but the weight followed her home every night. Not from the job, from the silence after it. Her apartment was neat, quiet, still. Her laundry stayed folded. The dishes washed themselves. No socks in the hallway. No crayon drawings on the fridge. No random toy dinosaurs under her pillow. Just stillness, and the ache of being wanted only after she was gone. By midweek, her cousin Tasha showed up unannounced. She brought takeout and a bottle of wine. "You look like someone ghosted her own life." Jasmine chuckled. It wasn't ghosting, it was evacuation. Tasha opened the wine. "Was it worth it?" Jasmine nodded slowly. "Yeah, because I wasn't asking for love. I was asking to be seen. There's a difference. And if he finally sees you now," Jasmine exhaled, "he'll have to learn that being sorry is not the same as being ready." That night, Landon sat in his car outside Jasmine's apartment. He didn't go up. He just stared at the building. At the window with the soft light glowing behind thin curtains, he imagined her inside. Not crying, not waiting, just gone from his reach. Kayla noticed the shift. On Thursday, she came into Landon's office, arms crossed, wearing her best shade of gloss and confidence. "You've been quiet." He didn't look up. "Because I'm thinking about her." He said nothing. Kayla rolled her eyes. "Look, I know you're grieving, or processing, or whatever it is you call it. But if she's out, I'd like to know where we stand." Landon shut his laptop, stood, walked around his desk. "Kayla, I'm sorry if I led you to believe this was more than temporary, but this house doesn't need noise. It needs healing." She blinked. "You're choosing her." "I'm choosing to stop pretending I didn't already make that choice the day Jasmine made my house feel like home." Kayla laughed dryly. You think she'll take you back just because you say it now? Landon's tone was calm. No, but I'm going to try, even if it takes time, even if it's too late, because she's the only thing I ever did right and treated wrong. Kyla picked up her bag. You always did like the quiet ones. But don't forget, quiet doesn't mean easy. I know, Landon said. It means she was waiting longer than I deserved. By the time Kyla left the house, Miles was already packing a small bag of his own. Where are you going? Landon asked. To Jasmine's, he said plainly. You can't just show up. I'm not going for me. I'm going for you. Landon stared at his son, and for once, saw the man he was becoming. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply left, and that shook everything. Have you ever realized someone mattered? Only after they stopped waiting for proof. Landon let silence become his answer, and Kyla filled the space Jasmine once called home. But some replacements only remind you what was real. What would you do if the love you took for granted started loving herself more than she loved you? If this moment hit you hard, don't scroll past. Like this story. Comment your thoughts. And subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful love, loss and life lessons, told the way they really happen. Jasmine hadn't expected a knock at her door that evening. She had just stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a robe, hair damp and skin still dewy. She moved to the window first, cautious, then froze. Miles, backpack slung over one shoulder, a stuffed dinosaur in the other hand, standing in the hallway of her apartment building like it was Saturday morning again. She opened the door, stunned. Miles, his eyes welled up instantly. I know I wasn't supposed to come, but Dad drove me. Landon stood a few feet behind him. No suit, no distance, no script, just him, tired, still, present. Jasmine stepped aside. Miles ran into her arms. He didn't say anything at first, just held her. Tight, silent. She crouched to meet his eyes. Are you okay? He nodded. I just missed you too much. She kissed his forehead. I missed you too. Landon stayed at the door. He didn't move forward, didn't speak. Jasmine looked up at him. He met her eyes. I didn't come to ask for anything, he said. I just wanted him to see that I know where home is now. They didn't talk much that night. Jasmine made hot cocoa, while Miles drew at the kitchen table. Landon sat quietly, watching, not controlling, not interrupting, just learning how to be still in someone else's space. When Jasmine handed him his cup, he took it gently. Thank you, he said. She nodded. You're welcome. After Miles fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in his dinosaur blanket, Jasmine covered him and sat on the armrest nearby. I didn't expect to see either of you tonight, she said softly. Landon kept his eyes on the boy. He needed peace. Jasmine looked at him. And you? I needed to stop lying to myself. She didn't respond. He finally turned toward her. I didn't bring her in because I loved her. I brought her in because it was easier to invite noise than to sit in the guilt of what I did to you. Jasmine didn't flinch. I didn't know how to fix what I broke, he continued. And instead of trying, I hid behind a new distraction. Kyla was loud enough to drown out what you didn't want to hear, she said. He nodded. Exactly. And when I left, she asked, you took the quiet with you. The kind that forces a man to listen to what he tried to ignore. Landon set his cocoa down. I know you're not waiting for me anymore. I know you've started moving on, but I'm not here to ask you to come back. He paused. I'm here to let you know I'll be showing up, even if the door stays closed. Jasmine looked at him for a long moment, then said nothing. But her silence wasn't rejection this time. It was consideration. The next morning, Landon made breakfast. The pancakes were uneven, the eggs slightly overcooked, but Miles beamed anyway. You're getting better, he said, mouth full. Landon smirked. That's all I'm aiming for. Jasmine leaned in the kitchen doorway, arms folded. He looked at her. Do you want some? He asked. She raised an eyebrow. You offering or warning? He chuckled. Bit of both. She walked forward and took a plate. Guess I'll risk it. They sat together at the table, like old times, but nothing was the same. Because this time, Landon was present. This time, the room wasn't full of quiet tension. It was full of something else, something slower, something earned. After breakfast, Jasmine packed a small bag for Miles. A book, his toothbrush, a sweater. "You can come too," Miles said softly. Jasmine knelt. "I know, baby, but for now, you need to go home with your dad." He frowned. "Isn't this home?" She kissed his cheek. "This was a safe stop, but your house is still your home, and if things stay peaceful, maybe it can be mine again too." He nodded, hugged her again, and whispered, "Please come back." Landon stood at the door. He didn't rush her, didn't interrupt. When she finally walked up, she handed him the bag. "I meant what I said," he told her. "I'm not here to win. I'm here to change." Jasmine's eyes softened, but not all the way. "Then keep showing up." Consistently, he nodded, and left with his son. That night, Jasmine sat on the couch with the cocoa mug he had used earlier still sitting on her coffee table. She didn't wash it. She didn't put it away. She just let it sit there, proof that healing sometimes begins with less leaving and more returning. Landon didn't speak much on the drive home. Miles stared out the window, his stuffed dinosaur hugged tightly in one arm, the silence between them full but not heavy. For once, Landon wasn't trying to fill the space with small talk. He was letting it breathe. Because he'd learned, too late, that silence only hurts when it replaces truth. Now he was choosing stillness that allowed room for growth. At home, Miles walked into the house, set his bag down, and went straight to his room. Landon stayed behind in the living room. The silence wrapped around him again, but it didn't crush him this time. It reminded him of what he'd nearly lost, and what might still be possible. Upstairs, Miles opened his art drawer and pulled out a piece of folded construction paper. He drew a new picture, just 3 stick figures again, but this time he wrote a name above each one. Dad, me, Jasmine. No question marks, no parentheses, no maybe, just the 3 of them, labeled together. He folded it and placed it on his nightstand, then climbed into bed and smiled. The next day, Landon showed up at Jasmine's clinic unannounced. He didn't barge in. He waited outside, leaning against the passenger door of his car, holding a small paper bag. She stepped out just after 3 p.m., her shift running long. When she saw him, she stopped. He straightened up. "Before you tell me to leave, this isn't about talking," he said. She walked over, arms crossed. "I brought you lunch," he said. "The place near your apartment. The one you like with the honey-glazed salmon bowls." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to mean something?" He smiled slightly. "It's supposed to mean I was paying attention, even when you thought I wasn't." She didn't take the bag. Not immediately. Then, quietly, "I'm not interested in gestures. Not unless they come with proof that the change is real." "I know," he said. "I'm not a test," she added. "But I'm not a convenience either. You never were." She finally took the bag. He didn't stay. Just nodded once and got back in his car. That too was new. Later that evening, she ate the bowl alone on her balcony. It was perfect. He had remembered the extra sesame, the details, the things people forget when they're not really listening. And Jasmine, she was tired of being forgotten. The following week, Landon picked Miles up from school every day. They went to the park, ate messy burgers, argued over which dinosaur would win in a fight. At night, Landon read to him, sometimes poorly, sometimes better, but always present, always fully there. One evening, Miles said, "You sound like Jasmine when you read now." Landon smiled. "That's a good thing. It means you care." He ruffled his son's hair. "I always cared. I just didn't always show it." Jasmine showed it every day. Landon nodded. "I'm learning." That weekend, Jasmine came by to drop off a book Miles had left behind. She didn't expect Landon to be the one who opened the door. He looked more rested, less rigid. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't try to fix anything. He just said he left his dinosaur facts book. It's all he talks about. She handed it over. He's still trying to convince me that a Spinosaurus could beat a T-Rex. Landon chuckled. He's stubborn. She glanced at him. Takes after someone. Their eyes met. And this time, it didn't hurt. Before she left, Landon stepped onto the porch. One day he said, "If you're open to it, I'd like to take you to dinner again." "Dinner?" she asked, arms folded, like the first one. No expectations, just two people talking, not fixing the past, just seeing what the present feels like. She nodded slowly. "We'll see." And for now, that was enough. That night, Jasmine opened her journal. She wrote just one line. Sometimes coming back isn't about being asked. It's about being shown why you're safe to stay. She closed the book and let herself hope, quietly. But this time, she wouldn't carry the whole weight alone. Landon sat in his office, the walls around him lined with framed deals and polished plaques. But none of them mattered now, not after what Miles had said the night before. "You said not to get too attached to her." He had meant it as a warning back then, a defense, a preemptive shield so Miles wouldn't get hurt if Jasmine ever left. But in truth, it had been Landon giving himself permission to avoid responsibility. Now, Jasmine was gone, and Miles was the one left trying to clean up the mess. He closed his laptop, pushed away from his desk, and walked out without his blazer. He picked Miles up from school early. The boy ran to the car with a tired smile, backpack bouncing behind him. "Art club got cancelled," he said. "The teacher's sick." Landon nodded. "Want to go somewhere?" Miles tilted his head. "Like where?" "Anywhere you want." The boy thought for a moment, then said, "Can we go to the bookstore?" Landon smiled. "Let's go." They spent over an hour in the children's section. Miles sat on the carpet, flipping through dinosaur encyclopedias while Landon browsed nearby shelves. He picked out a parenting book. It felt awkward in his hands, like a man trying to buy forgiveness at checkout. Still, he bought it. And 2 new books for Miles. That night, Landon cooked dinner, burnt grilled cheese and store-bought tomato soup. Miles didn't complain. They ate together at the dining table, just the two of them. When they finished, Miles went upstairs to take a bath. Landon sat alone for a few minutes, staring at his phone. Jasmine's number sat at the top of his recent calls list. He didn't press it. Instead, he opened his notes app, typed one line. "A father doesn't teach strength by hiding his own softness." Then hit save. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat across town in her apartment, braiding her hair as soft jazz played in the background. Her phone buzzed with a text. Not from Landon. From Anita, her co-worker. Saw Landon at the bookstore, alone with Miles. Looked different, like someone trying to undo something. Jasmine stared at the message. Typed back, "Maybe he is." She didn't smile, but she didn't delete it either. The next morning, Landon knocked on Miles' door before school. The boy sat up in bed. "I want to write Jasmine a letter," he said. Landon blinked. "What for?" "She always wrote me notes in my lunchbox. And now I want to write one back." Landon's voice softened. "What do you want it to say?" Miles shrugged. "Just that I'm okay, that Dad's trying, that I still want her here." Landon nodded. "Let's write it together." They wrote it that evening, in Miles' handwriting, on lined notebook paper. "Hi, Jasmine. I hope you're good. Dad made grilled cheese. It was kind of burnt, but he tried. I read my new book. I drew a picture of a T-Rex. Dad says hi too. He's not yelling anymore. I miss you. I hope you miss us too. Love, Miles." Landon didn't add anything to the note. He didn't need to. He just folded it neatly and helped Miles place it in an envelope. That weekend, they drove across town. Miles held the letter with both hands. When Jasmine opened the door, she was already expecting them. She'd seen the car through the blinds. Miles stepped forward and offered the envelope. She took it. Read it slowly. Her lips trembled just a little when she reached the end. Then she crouched and pulled him into a hug. "I missed you too, baby." Landon stood back, hands in his pockets. When she rose, he didn't speak. She looked at him, waited. He finally said, "I didn't come here to ask anything. I came here to say thank you." "For what?" "For seeing both of us when I refused to." Jasmine looked down. "I still don't know what to do with you," she whispered. He nodded. "That's fair. But I know what to do with him," she added, glancing at Miles. "I want to be in his life. Still. Always." "You never stopped being in it," Landon said. "He never stopped seeing you." They didn't stay long. Just enough time for Miles to give a second hug and a hand-drawn dinosaur folded into a paper heart. When they left, Jasmine sat on the couch holding the note. She opened her journal and wrote, "Sometimes a child's letter says what the adults are too scared to say out loud." She folded the note, slipped it between the pages, and let herself feel not hope, but peace, for the first time in weeks. Sunday morning came slower than usual. No school alarms, no meetings, no pressure, just light pouring through the kitchen windows and the soft sound of a spatula scraping against a pan. Landon was making pancakes again, this time rounder, lighter, and slightly less burnt. Miles sat at the kitchen table drawing another dinosaur, his head tilted, tongue poking out the side of his mouth in concentration. It was quiet, but not the painful kind. The quiet now felt steady, present, whole. After breakfast, Miles disappeared into his room. Landon picked up his phone, stared at Jasmine's contact, and hesitated. Again. Then finally typed, "Can I come by later?" Not to talk, just to help clean, fold laundry, water plants, whatever's needed. He hit send. 3 minutes passed. Then the reply came, "You can come at 2. And don't wear another one of those stiff shirts." He smirked. For the first time in a long time. At 2 p.m. sharp, Landon showed up in jeans and a soft grey t-shirt. Jasmine opened the door wearing leggings, a loose tee, and a look that wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. "Laundry's in the basket," she said simply. He nodded. "Got it." She walked away. He followed her to the living room and started folding while she wiped down kitchen counters. They didn't talk, but they didn't avoid. He folded quietly, meticulously, like each shirt was part of something he was rebuilding. And maybe it was. After 30 minutes, Jasmine broke the silence. "Do you remember the first time we had dinner at your place?" Landon glanced up. "The lemon chicken? You burnt it." He chuckled. "I covered it in sauce. Tried to act like it was the plan." She smiled faintly. "You were nervous." "I still am." This time, she didn't correct him. He folded the last towel and placed it in the basket, then walked to the kitchen and started rinsing dishes without being asked. Jasmine leaned against the counter. "You know you don't have to do this, right?" "Yes," he said, scrubbing gently. "But I want to, because I should have done it before you ever had to ask." She studied him for a moment, then handed him the soap. After the kitchen was clean, they sat across from each other at the table, sharing leftover cookies Miles had baked during his last visit. They talked about neutral things, work, school updates, a new show Jasmine had been watching. The conversation was light, but the undertones were new. They weren't two people avoiding the past. They were two people walking around it, giving it space, but no longer letting it dominate the room. Before leaving, Landon reached into his pocket and handed her something. It was a folded sheet of paper, his handwriting, unpolished. "You loved us both in silence. You made our house soft again, and I let fear put a wall between us. But I never stopped feeling what I never learned to say." Jasmine's eyes stayed on the paper for a long time. Then she looked up. "You don't need to write poetry to be forgiven." He nodded. It wasn't for forgiveness, it was for truth. That evening, Jasmine placed the paper inside her journal, right beside Miles's note. She stared at both pages, the handwriting of two people who had shaped her heart in very different ways, and yet both belonged there now. She whispered to herself, "Healing doesn't need permission, just consistency," and closed the book. Back at home, Miles asked if Jasmine had smiled. Landon nodded. She did. Miles beamed. Did she say anything else? She said, I didn't have to keep proving myself with words. Then, what do you do now? Landon crouched beside him. I show her with how I live. That night, Miles drew a new picture. 3 people, again. But this time, he added something new, a bridge between them, and a small heart above it. Jasmine stood in the middle of her living room on Tuesday morning, holding a familiar drawing in her hands. Miles's latest masterpiece, the bridge, the 3 stick figures, the small heart above them. He had slipped it to her during pickup on Sunday, with a proud smile, and whispered, It means we're still connected, even if we're not in the same place. That boy always had a way of saying what adults took years to understand. She pinned it to her fridge, right beside a grocery list and a takeout menu, not because she didn't want to frame it, but because it belonged in the rhythm of her everyday life now, just like he did. Later that afternoon, Jasmine stopped by the local bookstore on her way home from work. As she browsed the fiction aisle, a woman tapped her shoulder. Are you Jasmine? She turned. Yes? I'm Tasha Landon's assistant. I hope this isn't weird. He didn't ask me to do this, but I felt like you should know. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Know what? Tasha glanced around. He turned down a promotion last week, a big one. It would have taken him to San Francisco. Everyone thought he'd take it, but he said his priorities changed, said his real life is here. Jasmine didn't reply right away. She just smiled once, small, quiet, thoughtful. Thanks for telling me. Any time, Tasha said, then walked away. Jasmine left the bookstore without buying a thing. She didn't need a new story that day. She was already living one, and maybe, for the first time in a long time, it was finally being written the right way. That evening, Landon and Miles played Uno at the dining table. Miles won 3 rounds straight. Landon accused him of stacking the deck. Miles grinned. You just don't shuffle right. They both laughed. Then Landon grew quiet. You know, he said, I used to think love was just showing up, doing the job, being dependable. Miles leaned back. And now? Now I think love is doing the scary part too. Saying what you feel, fixing what you break, choosing the same person even when it's not easy. Miles nodded like he understood more than most 9-year-olds should. She's gonna come back, he said. Landon looked at him. You think so? Miles shrugged. You're trying different now. That matters. The next day, Jasmine returned to her apartment after work to find a small package at her door. No label, just her name. She carried it inside and opened it. Inside was a book, her favorite one, the copy she'd once let Landon borrow and never got back. Tucked inside was a handwritten letter, not typed, not stiff, just ink on real paper. She sat on the couch and read it slowly. Jasmine, I never deserved the grace you gave me, but I want to spend every day becoming a man who finally does. I know now that love isn't convenience. It's accountability. You gave us more than I ever acknowledged. Thank you for teaching my son how to see people, and thank you for helping me become one worth seeing. Landon. Jasmine let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She closed the book gently and whispered, You're getting closer. That Saturday, Landon called, not texted, called. Hey, he said. Hi, she answered. I want to ask you something. Okay, I'd like to bring Miles by, just for a visit. No expectations, no pressure, just time. Jasmine paused, then said, I'll be home at 4. They arrived right on time. Miles wore a t-shirt that said Dinosaur Expert in bold green letters. He ran straight to the fridge, saw his drawing, smiled wide. You put it up. I did. Landon stood in the doorway, not wanting to take his shoes off until she said it was okay. She nodded once. He stepped inside. They spent the evening together, cooking dinner, watching cartoons, laughing at silly jokes. It wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. What mattered was that it was honest. No masks. No pretending. Just 3 people trying to heal in the same space. As the night settled in, Jasmine walked them to the door. Miles hugged her like always, tight, without words. Landon lingered a moment longer, then said softly, "You don't have to answer yet. But if there's even a small piece of you that still sees a future with us, I'll wait." Jasmine studied him, then placed her hand gently on his chest. "I'm not asking you to wait. I'm asking you to keep walking. If I catch up, then we'll talk." He nodded. "I will." And he left. But this time, he didn't feel like he was leaving something behind. He felt like he was heading somewhere real. 2 weeks passed. No texts, no unexpected deliveries, no late-night calls. Just silence. Not the cold kind, the kind that makes you pause. Think. Feel. Jasmine wasn't waiting. She was watching her own growth. Each morning, she left for work earlier. Each night, she cooked for herself, not out of necessity, but joy. And when she picked up Miles on Sundays, she noticed the changes in him too. He smiled more, sat straighter, talked about his dad like he wasn't afraid to like him again. One day in the car, Miles said, "He's trying for real. He doesn't pretend I'm okay anymore. He asks." Jasmine turned toward him at a red light. "And how does that make you feel?" "Seen," Miles said without hesitation. Later that week, Jasmine got an unexpected call. It wasn't from Landon. It was from Kyla. "I didn't call to cause problems," Kyla said calmly. "I called to say thank you." Jasmine blinked. "For what?" "For letting go. And for not dragging me when you had every reason to." Jasmine let out a tired breath. "I didn't do that for you. I did it for me." "I know," Kyla replied. "Still, thank you. Landon was never mine." "Not really." There was a beat of silence between them. Then Jasmine spoke. "Did you love him?" "I loved who he was when he wasn't pretending," Kyla said. "Which, honestly, only happened after he lost you." That night, Jasmine pulled out her journal. She hadn't written in weeks. But now, the words came. Healing doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes, it means knowing you could, but choosing to move forward first. She closed the book and stared out the window. Downtown glowed in the distance. She thought of who she was a year ago, afraid, unsure, quiet, and who she was now, rooted, not perfect, but present. The next Saturday, she was planting herbs on her small balcony when her doorbell rang. She wiped her hands on her jeans and opened the door. Landon stood there. This time, no suit, just jeans, a navy shirt, and a nervous smile. "Hey." "Hi." He lifted a small plant in a pot. "Mint. I remembered you said it helps you think." She stepped aside. "Come in." They sat on her balcony. He placed the pot down between them. "Looks good out here," he said. "Peaceful," she replied. There was a pause. Then he spoke. "I signed over partial custody." Jasmine's eyes met his. "I thought you were fighting for full." "I was fighting because I thought winning meant control. But I realized I don't need to control you to be a good father, or a better man." She said nothing, but the tightness in her chest softened. He continued. "I told Miles that we were a team, that even if we're not in the same house, we'd still make decisions together. And that includes you." Jasmine exhaled slowly. That was the first time he had truly said we and meant it. They sat quietly for a while, watching clouds, letting silence do the talking. Then Jasmine asked, "Do you miss me, or the version of you that existed with me?" Landon looked at her. "I miss the woman who taught me the difference." She didn't smile, but her eyes warmed. "And what do you want now?" He didn't rush the answer. "I want to rebuild, not what we had. Something better, something true." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it. It was a drawing. From Miles, 3 figures again. But this time, they stood on equal ground. No bridge, no gaps. Above their heads was a sun, bright, whole. Jasmine looked up. "I told him you might say no," Landon said softly. "And," he said, "it's okay. We'll still be good, but maybe one day we'll all sit at the same table again." She traced her fingers over the drawing, then looked at Landon. "You're not the same man who broke me." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm not the same woman who stayed." "I know that too." Jasmine stood, holding the picture. "I'm not ready to pick up where we left off, but I'm willing to talk." Landon rose to his feet. "That's more than I hoped for." They stood in her doorway again. But this time, no one was leaving. They were deciding to stay, to see, to try. The school auditorium buzzed with parents, teachers, and students. It was the annual Voices of Tomorrow event, an evening where selected students gave short speeches on anything they cared deeply about. Jasmine hadn't planned on attending. Miles hadn't even told her he was participating. But that morning he'd called. "Mum," he said, almost shy, "they picked me to speak." She paused on the other end. "What's your topic?" "I'd rather you just hear it, Liv." She agreed, rearranged her Saturday work schedule, and showed up that evening with a calm heart, but curious. She spotted Landon the moment she stepped in. He was seated near the front, reserved row, saving a seat beside him. He stood when he saw her, dressed simply in a button-down and slacks, no performance in his body language. Just presence. Jasmine walked over. "Hey." "Hi," he said, his voice steady. "Thanks for coming." They sat quietly as the event began. Student after student walked up to the podium, each voice brave in its own way. And then came Miles. He stepped on stage in a navy polo, khakis, and sneakers that were a little too clean. His posture was confident, but his hands fidgeted with the edge of the note cards. The room quieted. He looked out, found his parents, and smiled faintly before beginning. "Hi, I'm Miles DeWitt. I'm 10. And today, I'm talking about truth." Jasmine inhaled. Landon's shoulders tensed. Miles continued. "Truth is weird. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it helps, but mostly it just waits until you're ready." A few people chuckled. "My truth is about family. I used to think it had to look a certain way, like TV, or like my friend Andre's house, where his parents make pancakes every Saturday and wear matching pajamas on Christmas." More light laughter. Miles held his ground. "But that's not my family. Not anymore." Silence followed. "But I'm not mad. I used to be. I used to think someone had to be the villain if something breaks. But I was wrong." He glanced at the note card, then looked back up. "My mom and dad didn't stay together. They hurt each other. Not with fists, with words, with silence, with secrets." Jasmine's hand gripped the edge of her seat. "But then they started listening. To each other, and to me." The room was frozen now. Not a cough, not a whisper. "My dad brought someone else home once. It hurt. A lot. Because he didn't explain it. He just did it. And my mom, she didn't fight or yell. She just left. But the silence after, that did more than any fight ever could." Landon shifted slightly, eyes fixed on his son. "I was angry for a long time. I thought I didn't matter to either of them. But then something changed." He held up a small drawing, different from the others before. This one was larger, held high for everyone to see. 3 people again, the same as before, him, Jasmine, and Landon. But this time, the sun above them was smiling. There were no walls, no bridges, just light. I realized my family doesn't have to match someone else's. It just has to be honest. The crowd stirred, teachers wiping tears, parents nodding. "My truth is this: families make mistakes, parents fail. But healing starts when they stop acting perfect and start being real." He looked toward Jasmine and Landon again. "My parents are real now. We're not all living together, but we are together. In the ways that count." He paused, then smiled faintly. "And I hope one day someone else hears this and stops thinking their broken family means they're broken too." With that, he stepped back from the podium. Silence stretched long, then a wave of applause followed. Not the polite kind, the kind that rose from something deep. Jasmine stood, clapping through tears. Landon didn't clap. He just stared, eyes wet, stunned quiet. Backstage, the teacher nodded for parents to meet their children. Jasmine and Landon moved together, no words spoken yet, only shared breath and stunned hearts. Miles was waiting, beaming as they reached him. Jasmine crouched and wrapped her arms around him, eyes still moist. "That was brave," she whispered. Landon rested a hand on his son's shoulder. "You told the truth, and you told it with kindness. I've never been prouder." Miles grinned. "So, does that mean we can all go get burgers, together?" They both laughed. And somehow, in that hallway, no contracts signed, no labels defined, a new kind of family was forming. Real, resilient, quietly whole. Sunday afternoon arrived with the quiet hum of the city beyond Jasmine's balcony. The scent of fresh mint lingered in the air. Miles sat cross-legged on the living room rug, drawing again, this time humming as his pencil danced across the paper. Jasmine glanced at the clock. Almost 4. Landon would be arriving soon for their conversation. Not a date, not a reunion. Just a conversation. She wasn't nervous. She was clear. Her hair was pulled back, a simple dress on, no makeup. Just her, as she was. Miles walked over, holding his newest drawing. 3 hearts. One slightly bigger than the others. "This one's you," he said, pointing at the biggest. Jasmine smiled. "Why the biggest?" "Because you love the hardest." She kissed his forehead. The doorbell rang. Jasmine opened it, and Landon stood there, holding a small tray of lemon bars. "I baked," he said. She raised a brow. "You baked?" "Well, I watched the lady at the bakery bake them and told her I needed them to look homemade." She laughed, a short, soft sound she hadn't made in a while. "You want to come in?" He nodded. Miles looked up from the floor, grinned, then held up the drawing. "I made this today." Landon walked over slowly, knelt beside him. He studied the image. "This is beautiful," he said genuinely. "I drew the hearts in the order I think we're growing," Miles said. "Who's the smallest?" Landon asked. "Me. But not because I'm not important," Miles said. "I'm still learning." Landon nodded slowly. "I'm learning too." Miles handed him the picture. "You can keep it. I already know what it looks like." Landon folded it gently and put it in his jacket pocket like it was something sacred. "Thanks, buddy." Jasmine stood back, watching. She had seen Landon wear 1,000 expensive suits, but nothing looked better on him than this moment, being present, being real. Later, when Miles left for his piano lesson with Jasmine's neighbor, Landon stayed behind. They sat on the couch, this time with space between them. "I won't drag this out," he began. She nodded for him to continue. "I've spent the last few weeks not trying to impress you or convince you or fix the past, just trying to be a better man because I should have always been one." Jasmine folded her hands. "I believe people change, Landon, but I also believe we don't always get back what we broke. Sometimes we grow and still part ways." "I know," he said quietly. She studied his face. "But I also know love doesn't always leave. Sometimes it stays, quiet, waiting to be treated better." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I'm not asking to move back in, Jasmine. I'm not even asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a seat at your table, wherever that table is. As a man who respects your space, honors your worth, and keeps showing up for you and Miles." Jasmine felt the words, deep, not polished, not poetic, just plain and honest. She reached over, picked up her journal from the side table, opened to a page she'd written days before. She read aloud, "Love isn't proven by words, or even by staying. Sometimes it's proven by leaving and returning with nothing but better intentions." She looked at him. "That's where we are." He nodded. "I'll earn every inch you're willing to give. I'm not promising anything more than this moment," she said. "This moment is enough." They sat for a while, listening to the sound of the city softening outside. When Miles returned, he looked between them. "Are we okay?" Jasmine stood, held her son's hand, and looked at Landon. "We're on our way." Later that week, a video would circulate on the internet, not of a scandal, not of a confession, but of a boy standing in his school auditorium, giving a small speech during Parent Appreciation Day. He held the mic with calm confidence. My mom is the strongest woman I know. My dad is learning to be strong too. They don't live in the same house, but they both show up. They both love me. And that's what makes a family. The video went viral. But Jasmine didn't care about the internet. She cared about the moment she paused it, looked at the screen, and saw a boy who felt safe. And beside her, a man who had stopped pretending and started participating. Landon looked over. He's proud. He should be. They watched in silence, shoulder to shoulder. Still separate, still healing, but now, together. And maybe that was the beginning of something new, not built on the past, but grown from it. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Have you ever watched someone grow into the love they once couldn't give? Tell us in the comments, what part of this story hit you hardest? So many families are built in silence, forgiveness, and second chances. Your story might help someone find clarity or peace. If you felt every word like we did, hit the like button. Subscribe for more raw, emotional, and honest stories that remind us we're never truly alone. Share this with someone who still believes love can heal, even if it doesn't look like a fairy tale. Because sometimes the comeback is quieter, but stronger.